Hello and welcome to Valley Viewpoint. Did you know that there are forgotten people right here in the Walla Walla Valley? We're going to be talking with some people who are trying to help those that we've forgotten. Welcome to Valley Viewpoint. And welcome to Valley Viewpoint, Christy and David. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First question is, flood, what flood?
It seems like that, doesn't it? It's so long ago, and
This was what, 2015,
No.
2010?
believe it or not, when was it? February?
February.
Early February 2020. We actually had a pretty decent flood. I think they even called it the 100-year flood. if
Yes,
I
they
remember.
did. They did.
It was that serious from snow melt and heavy rain. And and then came COVID. So our focus turned to the pandemic, but there still is much to be done with the flood recovery.
So, scarcely 6 months ago, and no one is paying any attention any longer.
Right.
But that's not all correct, because some people are paying attention, and you're part of the group, or leading the group, that is. So, tell us about the long-term recovery group, and just what is it?
So it's the Blue Mountain Region Long-Term Recovery Group. I think David says it best when the last four words, if you look at it, that's really a national standard long-term recovery group. And so we're following that national standard. And David probably can give a little better introduction. He's well versed in this from previous events.
I would just say, by way of introduction, the name Blue Mountain Region implies Washington and Oregon. So we're working not only Walla Walla County, Columbia County, we're also probably even more involved in Umatilla County, down to Pendleton. They have had the most damage and have received some federal assistance and so forth. So the Blue Mountain Region implies we're crossing the state line. Long-term recovery group is a term that is used nationwide to describe what happens after FEMA leaves, what happens after the services, the county emergency services, the social services folks have provided all the help they can get. Then what do you do? Then what you do is you gather all your nonprofits, your churches, your Lions clubs, Rotary, whoever it might be, and you sit around a table and you bring your resources together, be they people, money, or material, and you figure out how you help people that have nowhere else to turn.
So, long after the media has forgotten about the event, and people who weren't immediately affected have moved on, there are still needs.
Absolutely.
So in the beginning, in February, we had about 700 flood survivors, families. And now we have whittled that down, and we have just about 540 families that are still in need of something. That could be fencing, that could be just getting rocks out of their backyards, it could be a new deck, it could be new carpet, it could be that they don't have any heating for this coming winter. So there's a lot of needs out there. We have about 78 families right now in Walla Walla and the Waitsburg area, and then the rest of those 540 are all on the Oregon side.
So how does the long-term recovery group function?
I can talk to that a little bit. The national model describes a group that has an executive board or executive committee that make decisions on policy, procedures, and so forth. There is an unmet needs roundtable, which basically allows anyone with money, material, or manpower to sit and to contribute to helping folks. We utilize people called disaster case managers. They're really the boots on the ground that are meeting the survivors and finding out what their needs are, vetting their ownership of the property, seeing what other services they can advocate for them, and that sort of thing. So we have an executive committee, an unmet needs roundtable. The other functions that we have are a housing committee to help with rebuilding houses or repairing houses. A very big part of what long-term recovery groups do are blend volunteers and volunteer groups into helping people. So there's a volunteer committee. And finally, we have a spiritual and emotional support committee that helps people get help with mental situations, mental illness, let's say, or just have someone to talk to that's willing to listen to their story.
So what would you say to that citizen who got away from the flood, maybe went to another part of the state to live with family for a while? They've come back and they said, hey, you've forgotten me. I've got all my damage still and I need help. What do they do? Where do they turn?
So they can call United Way as a first stop. And we have actually 6 case managers that are now working with our long-term recovery group. It's supposed to be about 20 cases per case manager. Obviously, we have about 100 cases per case manager. But what we're trying
and we
to
should mention that you are the director of the United Way.
Yes, yes. But that's kind of one of the call centers that you can call. CAPCO down in Umatilla County is another one. It's the Community Action Council down there that you can call. But so they would call, and then we would get them set up with a case manager and look at what their needs are. Our goal is to get them back to a safe, secure, and sanitary living quarters. We're not trying to make them better than they were, but we're trying to bring them back to where they were before the flood.
Now, David, how did you get involved with disaster response? And when we say long-term recovery group, this is not a short-term, 2-week, 3-week thing. You must have a long-term commitment. Where is that rooted?
Well,
why are you doing this?
From other disaster experiences, we know that it's going to take, believe it or not, 7 years to recover from the flood in February. 7 years, based on how long it took for the relief effort and so forth. I think my passion, my interest came about when I was working with the wildfires up in northern central Washington.
Colville area a couple of years ago?
Yeah, 2014, 2015. There was the Carlton Complex fire, and then the next year, on the heels of that, there was the Okanagan County fires that just, devastated that whole area.
Yes.
And I worked with a rebuild effort up there with the Carlton Complex and Okanagan County Long-Term Recovery Group with the Methodist Church. And we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars and have now, as of right now, rebuilt 39, and I think they're working on their 40th home. In fact, they're already looking at maybe rebuilding some from the wildfires of just this past couple weeks. So I saw firsthand the devastation of the wildfires up there. I saw a Methodist church parsonage burnt to the ground with nothing but the foundation and all the twisted sheet metal and the poor pastor's weight bench with the bent barbell from the heat in the basement, and all of this stuff had just fallen through because of the fire. And that was my first introduction to how devastating something like this could be. And then we worked for months and months to raise funds across our Methodist conference and to try to help with the rebuilding effort. And that has been going on for 6 years now.
Now, the Methodist Church has a formally organized disaster response group called UMCOR, popularly for the acronym, correct?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about UMCOR.
United Methodist Committee on Relief is a worldwide relief organization, much like the Adventist Church has. You guys are worldwide as well. And one of the main things UMCOR does is to respond to disasters. They typically like to pride themselves that they're the first in and the last out. And they have a very good reputation around the world. In fact, Bill Gates, when he wanted to do some work with health in Africa, he called on UMCOR to help him get connected on the ground. So good reputation, a great group, spread pretty thin right now. I mean, just
a lot of disasters around the world.
Yep, just added a hurricane in Louisiana and wildfires and everything. It's really taken a toll on that.
Now, Christy, as the director of United Way, you intersect with a lot of private nonprofits. How valuable are they in response to a disaster like this flood?
They're invaluable. I mean, we count on every single nonprofit to come to the table and help. Some are there every time. Others come when they're needed. In fact, today we just heard a case and one of our partner agencies came around and said, we'll be the ones that step in and we'll help get those people housed. So we still have people that are not housed after the flood of 2020.
After 6 months?
After 6 months.
they're living on the street. They're in temporary.
Churches, yeah,
Temporary.
yeah, temporary housing, yeah. So we.
Are these families with children?
Some are families
Some are
with
families
children.
with children.
Yep, absolutely.
And school is starting, and we have kids that don't have a place to live,
Right.
and they're starting school.
Yes.
Right.
What a terrible, terrible
Right.
thing.
And so those cases are high priority for us. I mean, we're really trying to make sure that those are the first cases that come to our unmet needs table. There's a definite priority list, seniors, low income
Veterans.
families,
Veterans.
veterans.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we're using those as our priority cases.
Now, some of our viewers may be those people who were displaced, but others may be saying, hey, what can I do to help? What are the needs? I have maybe a place to live, maybe I just want to donate some money to the effort. What do those viewers do?
They can do all of the above.
They can.
I would say if you are interested in supporting this work and you can provide volunteers or be a volunteer yourself, an individual volunteer that doesn't mind getting their hands a little dirty and stringing some fence or cleaning up some property. If you're a contractor and have heavy equipment that can move things like that and are willing to donate your time and your talents, that's a good way to do it. Certainly we're always looking for funding.
Absolutely.
Or if you're a member of an organization, let's say like the Rotary Club or someone else that has not only volunteers but some funding or access to grants, we need you at our roundtable, our Unmet Needs Roundtable, to be part of that process.
Now, I understand that there is a volunteer coordinator on the Washington side, one on the Oregon side, and when we get to the second half of our program, I'd like to get some specific information about how people can contact you that need assistance, how people can contact you who have assistance to give, and how people can volunteer. What are the contact numbers, etc., for those volunteers, coordinators, and we can get some things going, help some people out.
That's great.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So, don't go away. We're going to be right back with more information about the 2020 flood and what is being done and what still needs to be done, and perhaps what you can do to be a part of this important response effort. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to Valley Viewpoint. If you are just joining us, my guests today are Christy Llewellyn, who is the director of the United Way, and David Reinholtz from the Long-Term Recovery Group. We're talking about the forgotten flood and the people who are still having problems adjusting to life that was disrupted earlier this year by those floodwaters. So, guys, during the break, we talked a little bit about a family that was severely affected by this, and even 6 months down the road was still up in the air. Now, of course, we want to protect their privacy, but what can you tell us about the situation and what the Long-Term Recovery Group has done for them?
So this was a family that's living on the Washington side, and they are a large family, lots of children, living in a trailer home, and when the flood hit, their trailer home washed away. And so it was really lucky that some local people came together and said, we'll get you into one of the churches, and they have housed them, if you can believe this, for the last 6 months.
Oh my.
And so since then, they need to find a place to have permanent housing to settle in. And so the case was brought by one of our case managers, disaster case managers, to the unmet needs table. And we are so blessed that one of the local agencies stepped forward and said, we'll pay for their first month's rent and their deposit.
Wow.
And one of the questions at the unmet needs table was, what are they going to do next month? And our case managers are so great. They were able to write up a budget with this family, and they are able to go ahead and pay for their housing moving forward. So they just needed a jump start, and now they're going to be set.
So this tragedy could have been a double tragedy. I mean, they were people who lost their home. And I don't know how these kids made it through the end of the school year. I'm thinking, with that kind of disruption, I mean, when I was a student, it was just difficult enough for me to, stay focused on my studies with the normal distractions, but this total upheaval. And as another school year is about to begin, they were facing maybe homelessness.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I think it was just 2 days before they would have had to have left their situation that they were in.
So this second tragedy was averted because of the work of the long-term recovery group, of which you're a part. Volunteers. There may be people out there that are saying, wow, that's something that I would like to do something about. So if a person wants to volunteer, what do they do? And do you take individuals? Do you take groups? What are you looking for?
Yes, we are taking individuals and groups. So if you have a group, say you're a Lions Club or a Rotary Club or a church, and you have a group of volunteers that like to do work and don't mind stringing a little fence or cleaning up some rock and debris from a flood, if you're a contractor and you have heavy equipment and you're willing to donate your time and your talents, all of those things are needed, and we could use your help. The numbers that you'll see on the screen for the United Way and the phone number there, that's probably a good start. And if you're in Oregon, that's equally a good place to go, because we're very connected with the Central Oregon program, or I should say the Community Action Program East Central Oregon, or CAPCO. They're kind of the one-stop shopping for that Pendleton area, so we can connect you if you're in Oregon or Milton Freewater as well. So that's how I would start.
So flood victims and volunteers would call the same number and just explain what their purpose is.
Right. We still have some work to do with development of a website and a Facebook page and so forth, so that we could have a place where people could sign up online and volunteer and so forth. But we're really, really close, thanks to some good work by David Lopez from Walla Walla University, who has done a lot of work with his college students in Africa and elsewhere doing mission work. And he's setting up a really robust program that eventually will be very convenient to sign up for. So we're excited about that, but we're not quite there yet.
Okay. February was the flood. The next month, the unforeseen, the 100-year event. We are in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. Does this have any impact upon the response for this flood?
Absolutely. It really does. We have had to change. The national model is, you deploy your volunteers. They go out, they do the work, and we've got survivors that need help. And now we are pulled back. We really had to go back to the drawing board. We were really lucky to have David Lopez and Louise
Kenzel.
Mm-hmm. They are actually the co-chairs of the volunteer committee, and they have done a fabulous job writing some of the ways that we can stay safe, that we can deploy volunteers safely once we start to reopen. Right now, there is no deployment of volunteers.
So you don't want to send out volunteers and they all come back sick.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even the professionals, I call them the professionals, FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the state and county emergency managers, they've all been frozen in place too. They have not been able to go out and really assess the damage. A lot of it's been done remotely. In fact, we were joking that this is the first time Christy and I have seen each other face to face since early March at our very first organizational meeting. So lots of Zoom meetings to contact survivors. There's email, lots of phone calls. It's not like we would like to do it where you can go visit someone's property and say, show me what the problem is, and show me that you're the owner and we can help you, that sort of thing. So it's been a struggle for us to get to where we need to get to.
Now, when we say long term, what are we talking about? 6 months, a year?
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah. So the way that they do that, I think you can explain probably the math a little bit. I think
It's based on how long the relief effort took, and there are models that they use to come up with this, but based on how long the flood recovery or the relief effort took and the flood recovery effort is taking, they predict about 7 years till you have met all of the needs of the survivors. And remember, this is not building them a bigger, better, faster lifestyle, right? This is safe, sanitary, and secure. So we're just trying to get a roof over their head, make sure they're safe and sanitary and secure. That's really our goal.
Well, I know we're still in summer, but before we know it, winter will be here. If I understand the math, there were over 700 people initially affected by this, displaced. And now the numbers are down in the maybe lower 500s. What happens to those 500?
Well, we're working. So we've created, the case managers are creating a priority list. So they're looking at who needs help. We had a lot of trailer homes affected by the flood. And those trailer homes, they may not have looked like they had any damage, but what really happened was when the waters came up, it soaked into all their insulation underneath the flooring, and then it went up the walls, and it's continuing. So we need to get insulation out to a lot of families. I was listening to somebody yesterday talk about there were a few families without heating, so we're worried about those families moving forward. So those disaster case managers are really looking at that priority list and making sure that we're helping those families first.
So there could be mildew problems, a lot of things that you don't see immediately, but you have to deal with them.
Yep, mold. Mildew. And that's why, the construction volunteers are so important. Can they go in? Can they assess a home? Make sure that it's safe and sanitary and secure, and then we can help them however they need help. But if we need to remove their trailer homes, there's been quite a few that not in our area, but in others.
It's very expensive to take a mobile home to the dump. Super expensive, and these folks can't pay for it. So just getting rid of a trashed mobile home is really expensive, and kind of something that's a little bit beyond the scope of what we do. But there has been a lot of damage to levees and riverbeds, and the river has changed its course, and so people are worried about, now the river's even closer to my home. What do I do when the next flood? And we know there's going to be a next flood. So there's a lot of concern out there for that. But luckily for all of us, there are multi-agency task forces at work, and Corps of Engineers and lots of other folks that worry about that kind of thing. But it takes forever for that kind of mitigation to happen. So years before they'll see really the levee being rebuilt and so forth. So it's going to take a while.
So it's not something that happens overnight, and your group works with this, including an Unmet Needs Committee.
Yes.
I think you meet on a regular basis.
We do.
We do.
Every Thursday at 2 o'clock, we have an Unmet Needs Roundtable, and basically to sit at that table, all you need to have is access to some resources, volunteers, money, or materials. If you have any of those things, we'd love to have you sitting around the table and helping us meet some unmet needs.
Any final words to our viewers, either the ones who may be displaced and are still looking for help, or for the potential volunteers that want to get involved?
Go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, call the number or send us an email. We'd love to get you connected, either with our disaster case managers and hear your survivor story, or to have you as a volunteer. Or if you have some experience, we are desperately in need of some of that experience of construction, electrical, those kind of things. So it would be great to have some extra hands.
I would just say that we may not have all the answers, but we know people that do, and we can help you get in touch with them.
Excellent. Thank you both for joining us, and I want to thank you for joining us on Valley Viewpoint today. If you have an idea, a concept, maybe someone you think should be on Viewpoint, why not contact us? 529-9149 or Valley Viewpoint at bmt.tv. For Viewpoint, I'm Dan Solis.